Most horror stories start with a warning. Don't open the door. Don't go in there. Don't answer when something calls your name. But this one is different because it starts with something normal. A late train, a quiet ride home, a route you've taken before. You're tired, your guard is down, and you're not really paying attention. Then one small thing feels off. And by the time you realize it's not a normal mistake anymore, it's already too late. Long before people started talking about liminal spaces and endless yellow hallways, Japan already had a story that hit a much more familiar nerve. Not a haunted house. Not some impossible maze. Just a train station. A station that shouldn't be there. A station no one means to reach. And a station that some people believe you don't come back from the same way you entered. This is the legend of Kisaragi Station. And once this story gets into your head, late-night trains stop feeling harmless. What makes this story work so well is how ordinary it feels at the start. There's no cursed object, no weird ritual, no creepy stranger handing someone a forbidden item. It's just a woman riding the train home late at night. According to the story, she was on a route she already knew. Nothing about the trip was supposed to be memorable. It should have been one of those rides you barely even think about. And that's exactly why it gets under people's skin. A haunted building is easy to avoid. A forest in the middle of nowhere is easy to avoid too. But a train ride home? That's routine. That's everyday life. That's the kind of thing people do half awake. So the story doesn't begin in a place that feels dangerous. It begins in a place that feels safe. And that may be the first truly unsettling part of it. Not that something strange happened, but that it happened in a place where nothing strange was supposed to happen at all. At first, the problem seemed small. The train didn't stop where it was supposed to. That's it. A missed station doesn't sound like horror. It sounds like something you could explain away in 5 seconds. Maybe she wasn't paying attention. Maybe she was more tired than she thought. Maybe the train was running differently that night. But then it passed another stop. And then another. That's when the feeling changes. Now, it's not just a simple mistake anymore. The train car starts to feel different too. Fewer people, less movement, more darkness in the windows. The kind of silence that slowly gets louder the more you notice it. First, you hear the tracks, then the hum of the lights, then the fact that nobody is saying anything. And then you start waiting for something familiar. An announcement, a stop you recognize, any sign that the world is still behaving normally. But it never comes. And when that happens, your mind does what it always does. It tries to explain things. There has to be a reason. This still makes sense. I just haven't figured it out yet. That's what makes moments like this scary. Not because reality suddenly shatters, but because it stays almost normal long enough to make you doubt yourself first. At some point, she does what almost anyone would do now. She grabs her phone. And that detail matters. Because if her phone had died, or if she'd lost signal completely, the story would feel more straightforward. Isolating, yes, but simpler. Instead, she can still send messages. She can still describe what's happening. She can still ask people what to do. She can still reach out. And somehow, that makes the whole thing worse. Because now, there's a record of it. A record of someone trying to stay calm while things slowly stop making sense. She tells people the train skipped her stop. Then, another one. Then more. And the replies are exactly what you'd expect at first. Maybe you got on the wrong line. Maybe you missed your station. Maybe ask the conductor. Maybe just get off at the next stop. That's how real fear usually starts. Not with immediate panic, with people trying to be reasonable for a little too long. Because no one wants to be the first person to say something is seriously wrong here. Eventually, the train reaches a station, and the name is unfamiliar. Kisaragi Station. This is the point where the story really shifts. Up until now, she was still on the train, still inside a system that belonged to normal life. Even if something felt wrong, she was still inside something familiar. But the second she steps onto that platform, the fear changes. Now, she isn't just delayed. She isn't just confused. She's somewhere she doesn't recognize, and somehow that place feels wrong in a way that's hard to explain. That's what makes Kisaragi Station so unnerving. It doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds empty. Not movie monster empty. Not blood on the walls empty. Just wrong. No normal bustle. No obvious staff. No clear help. No comforting sign that she can simply turn around and catch the next train back. It feels like a real station, but stripped of the one thing that makes places like that feel safe, ordinary life. And when a place loses that, even simple things start to feel threatening. The platform, the lights, the silence. All of it starts to feel like it's waiting for something. She tries to leave the station. And this is where the story stays smart. A weaker horror story would throw in a monster right here. Something loud, obvious, immediate. But Kisaragi Station doesn't need that. The fear comes from the fact that the world outside still looks almost normal. There are roads, tracks, a tunnel, darkness stretching out ahead. It looks like somewhere you should be able to escape from, but it doesn't feel that way. And then there are signs that she may not be alone. A distant sound, a figure, movement somewhere ahead. Normally, another person would be a relief. In a story like this, it isn't. Because when you already know you're in the wrong place, you can't trust what you're looking at anymore. Is that someone who can help? Or is it something you really don't want getting closer? That uncertainty does a lot more than a jump scare ever could. Because once your mind starts filling in the gaps, every shape in the dark becomes a possibility. And the loneliest part of this story is that none of it feels fully unreal. That's what makes it stick. The road looks usable. The tunnel looks real. The tracks go somewhere. Everything is almost normal. Almost is the word that defines this legend. Almost safe. Almost familiar. Almost like the world you know. But not quite. And that gap is where the fear lives. At a certain point, the question stops being, how do I get home? The question becomes, am I even still in the right world? That's the idea at the center of Kisaragi Station. Not just getting lost, crossing some kind of line without realizing it, ending up in a place that still looks close enough to reality to fool you, while feeling completely cut off from the life you came from. And what makes that so effective is how quiet it is. There's no big reveal, no dramatic rulebook, no moment where everything suddenly turns supernatural. Just a slow, creeping realization that the systems people trust every day may keep moving on without them. The train line, the city, the lights in apartment windows, home. All of that may still exist, just not where she is anymore. And that idea is disturbing in a very specific way. Because this story isn't only about danger, it's about being shut out. Like the world is still there, still running, still normal for everyone else. But you're no longer part of it. Some versions of the story suggest she eventually found a way back. But stories like this were never really built around happy endings. Because coming back is not the same thing as being okay. Even if you return, what exactly did you return from? And how do you prove to yourself it can't happen again? That may be the most unsettling version of the legend. Not that Kisaragi Station traps you forever, but that it lets you leave. That it gives you just enough of an exit to send you back carrying the feeling of it. After that, normal places don't feel fully normal anymore. A quiet platform feels a little too quiet. An unfamiliar station name lingers a little too long. A dark tunnel hits differently than it used to. That's what the best urban legends do. They don't stay inside the story. They follow you into ordinary life. And once they attach themselves to something every day, like a train ride home, you can't completely shake them. Most people think the scariest places are the ones that already look cursed. Abandoned hospitals, dark forests, ruined houses. But Kisaragi Station is worse for a simpler reason. It hides inside something familiar. A seat by the window, the hum of the train, the last ride home after a long day. A route you know so well, you stop paying attention to it. That's why this legend still works. Not because anyone can prove it, not because it has to be true, but because it takes something ordinary and makes it feel unsafe. And that kind of horror lasts. So the next time you're on a late train, and the car is too quiet, and the windows are all black, and the stop you're waiting for never comes, you may think about this story. And for 1 second, you may wonder if the train is really taking you home, or if it's taking you somewhere you were never supposed to reach. A lonely platform, a station name you've never heard before, a place that feels real but shouldn't exist. Kisaragi Station. And once an idea like that gets into your head, night trains never feel quite the same again.